We're going to start on a negative note, but mostly because I want to end on a positive. So we'll start here. This is some of the negative side to running for mayor as an 18-year-old blonde woman. It's not so fun to look at, and it wasn't fun to receive. Lots of, will you go out with me? Those were very frequent. Lots of, you're mature, you're too young, things like that. Some, you've lost every male vote in Toronto. And my absolute favorite, which reads, after I'd said on Twitter that I wasn't invited to a debate, FYI, you weren't invited because they're not taking you seriously. And really, who would? Hashtag enjoy your 15. It's been a really long 15 minutes. It's been really exhausting as well. I hope this 15 minutes is shorter than the last 8 months have been. This guy got really into it, as you do insulting people on the internet. He thinks it's weird that I don't provide a personal email for people to ask me out with. He thinks I can't attend university since I did my 5th year at alternative school. And he thinks that I'm too broke to shop new. He clearly really didn't understand what I meant by the word vintage. So part of the whole running for mayor thing has been difficult. Those messages were received over a 24-hour period fairly early on in my campaign in April. It was also the 24-hour period after I spoke out against online sexism, which I'm sure is shocking to no one. We've seen this happen over and over again recently. In March of this past year, just about a month before I received those messages, I was 18 years old. I was in the middle of doing my 5th year of high school, or a victory lap, as many people like to call it. I was taking Indigenous governance studies, economics, and writer's craft, and I had just begun my campaign for mayor, like all people doing a victory lap. And, a lot of people thought I was running in response to Rob Ford, and all of the things you are picturing when I say Rob Ford. And of course, partly that's true. I've lived in this city for the last 4 years, and I would be lying to say that, the last 4 years of Toronto politics haven't affected me, to say that Rob Ford didn't affect my decision to run. But there was a bigger problem, and a bigger reason I ran for mayor. In Toronto, we have an issue with long-term planning. We're not unique. Many cities and towns across this country and around the world have a problem with long-term planning. In Toronto, it shows with concrete raining from the Gardiner, our elevated highway. It shows with our transit system that used to be the best in North America. Right? It's the best in North America? No? Yeah, no. We've now far outgrown that transit system. It shows with our extremely high youth unemployment rate, something that I know makes me nervous and I'm sure makes you nervous. It shows with our extremely long social housing wait list. Young people are understandably farsighted. We understand that when we make decisions, we have to often live with them for a really long time. And so we make different decisions. We can't defer decision-making, especially in government, because we'd only be deferring it to ourselves. We'd be saying, hey, later self, you make that choice. So young people are not in government, though. We're not making decisions about our future, and we're not making decisions that we have to live with. But in government, we're making decisions for a whole group of people. For young people, these problems of these problems of diversity in government, which is a huge issue currently right now, and these problems, global ones of climate change and of changing economies, and local ones of highways and transit systems, they're ours to solve. They've been gifted to us by a group of people who didn't want to make them earlier, the people who didn't build transit and the people who didn't fix the Gardiner when it began to fall apart. So I saw a problem, and I decided I needed to fix it. I decided it was my problem to solve. In scouting, that is one of the core values, that you need to solve, that if you can identify a problem, it's now your problem to solve. It's one of the things that, got me to survive a weekend where we forgot both the marshmallows and the toilet paper. It's one of the things that got me to survive being in charge of a group of terrified 10-year-olds through a microburst storm. And it's the thing that launched my mayoral campaign. Young people were not represented in government, and I wanted to solve that problem. So I've been in scouting over half my life at this point, long enough to have more than a few embarrassing pictures, long enough to go to Sweden for the World Jamboree, which is where this photo was taken. See if you can find me. And long enough to learn a thing or two about lighting fires. But none of those have been as important and valuable to me as the idea of problems being yours and you having to solve them. So I may or may not have given you the impression that I like to take on big projects, like running for mayor, but I like to take on age-appropriate projects. I didn't try to run for mayor before I turned 18. And so at 10 years old, I took on an age-appropriate project. I decided I was going to buy a canoe, a whitewater canoe. And whitewater canoes are incredibly expensive. They're a little out of a 10-year-old's price range. And so my dad, being sensible, told me that we could split it. If I could come up with half the money, my parents would pay for the other half. So at 10 years old, I needed to raise $800. I shined shoes and cleaned litter boxes. I sold lemonade. I convinced relatives to match the money I earned. I passed hats around at campfires. I returned my parents' empties. I saved every cent of my birthday and Christmas money. And a little less than a year later, I had all the money I needed, plus a little bit. And I bought a canoe. I promptly had it painted gradient blue and green and named it Gummy Worm because I was 10 years old. I think I look pretty cute, by the way. This moment is one of my proudest, not this one in the picture, but the one of buying that canoe. The whitewater paddling community is an incredibly supportive one, if a little bit of a disorganized one. And they taught me many things about how to surf and how to ferry and how to eddy out. But more than anything, they taught me that there were people who believed in me, people who wanted me to succeed, people who would cheer me on, who would watch me do something over and over again and keep doing it wrong, people who would take the time to correct me and teach me something, people who would stop their own paddling to watch me do it, to watch me paddle. That is one of the things that I think is incredibly important, that there are people in the world who are willing to cheer you on. I was never alone on the river, even though I was alone in my canoe. Early on in my canoeing career, I call it a career, but I never got paid to do it, I decided to do slalom canoe racing. It was something my family was involved in, and in slalom canoe racing, if you miss a gate, which is one of those things I'm going through in that picture, you're allowed to go and try and do it again. The only rule is that no one can help you. No one can touch you or your boat. So one race, I missed a gate, and I decided I was going to drag my boat up, and I was going to get that gate. It was going to add a lot of time to my final time, but I was going to do it. And so here I am dragging that boat up. I wasn't allowed to accept any help, but people were cheering me on, and that was all the help I needed to accomplish that task. And I did. It was difficult. That boat's very heavy, but I did it. I think that it's incredibly important to recognize those people were important in that moment. I was dragging the boat, but those people cheering me on were just as important as what I was doing. But the kind messages I received throughout my campaign, these are some of the ones from my personal friends that came through Snapchat, and having your friends add your campaign sign to their Snapchat story is a sign of real love. And I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty thrilled at how overused the hashtag Morgan for May became. Was one of the coolest moments of my campaign. And some of the other nice ones came in through Twitter. These are some of the ones just from election night and the morning after, because that's what I took screenshots of. Don't normally screenshot all your tweets. And believe me when I say that these tweets buoyed me through a lot of things. These specific ones got me through a very late night, followed by a very early morning. You don't say no to Metro Morning, but 6 a.m. comes very soon after 4 a.m. I did not sleep a lot election night. But these messages, they're not as much fun to read aloud as the ones I showed you earlier. They're not funny. You can't laugh at how stupid these people are because they're kind. And that's also incredibly important, people being kind to each other. So these are the ones that came in through Tumblr, which was some of the most fun long-form ones. My favorite ends, "You give me hope that I could one day run for political office." And honestly, if that one message was the only thing that came out of my entire campaign, I would have been happy. Being able to inspire other young people to feel that their dreams are possible is the most amazing feeling I have ever had. It's what got me through a very, very long 8 months of a campaign. So the whole point of this is not to convince you to run for mayor, because 65 people ran this past time, and if all of us in this room ran, as well as all the people who ran last time, well, I'm not sure that ballot would fit in the box. But I do want to tell you what you can do. I know a woman who I met her a few months ago, and she makes time every day to say something nice to 10 strangers. I try and make a point to say thank you for the work I consume online. I read a lot of articles and tweets, and I make a point to say thank you for the people who create that content. My cousin makes a point to send me handwritten letters. I have friends who make a point to send nice texts to each other. And it's easy to do the same, and it's incredibly important to be those people cheering others on, to make those long journeys and those hard journeys often easier for other people, because people will also be there for you. During my campaign, the worst moments were the ones where I felt alone, and the best ones were the ones where I felt surrounded by other people. And it's the same for all of us. We are at our best when we are part of a community, when we're surrounded by people willing to support us and to cheer us on, when we're not alone. So you can send a text or leave a comment or send an email or even snail mail. You can attend your friends' sports games, and you can attend their launch parties, and you can send thank you notes. And all of these things matter. They're all incredibly important to helping people remember that they matter to you, even in the littlest way. In the Jewish tradition, there's a quote from Rabbi Tarfa which says, "It is not incumbent upon you to complete the work, but neither are you at liberty to desist from it." And that's how I want you to feel when you leave here. You don't need to run for mayor. You don't need to make the world perfect. You don't need to win a gold medal or start an organization. You can do those things if you want, and you're welcome to. But what I want you to feel is that you don't have to do it alone, and that you do need to lend a helping hand. You don't need to finish all the work, but you do need to lend a hand. Thank you.